ever seen. I'm gonna give it an A+. It's easily the best movie of 2018. Bye-bye now!
The wonderful thing about Tigger is Tigger the wonderful thing.
Tomb Raider is a new video game adaptation movie from the popular series Tomb Raider, and it stars Alicia Vikander in the starring role. And this movie is basically a new movie about Tomb Raider. We had the two other Tomb Raider movies in the past, which were with Angelina Jolie, and those movies were hilariously awful, and those were more based on the cheesy, older Tomb Raider games. This Tomb Raider movie is based off the newer Tomb Raider, the more cinematic Tomb Raider. And it's basically an origin story for Lara Croft, and her father left her years and years ago to explore something, and her past comes back to haunt her, and she has to go on this whole adventure because of her father, and yay, it's a Tomb Raider movie. So guys, I saw the trailer for Tomb Raider many times. I saw it over and over again in the theater, because it felt like every time I went to the theater to see a movie, they played that Tomb Raider trailer. Every time I went to a movie, I had to sit through that trailer again, and I was honestly dreading it. Not only because video game movies are never successful and they're always bad, but also because it looked like a movie that was taking the character of Tomb Raider really seriously, even though it's kind of a cheesy source material. I was kind of just like, oh, this is gonna be a movie that thinks it's really serious, but it's actually really stupid and ridiculous at the same time, and the tones aren't gonna mesh. I thought it just looked like one of those kinds of movies, and I wasn't interested in it at all. I was just kind of like, oh boy, it's gonna be another crappy video game movie. Yay! To my knowledge, there hasn't been a single good video game movie. I think the only good video game movie is probably Wreck-It Ralph, which isn't even based off a particular video game. It's kind of like the video game Avengers or whatever. It's like the Toy Story of arcades, you know? How, like, the characters are alive when people aren't around and they're going to different arcade machines. It's not based off a singular video game. Any movie that's actually based off a singular video game is always bad. I've wanted a Zelda movie for years. Ever since I was a little kid, I wish we could get, like, these Zelda animated movies or, like, a Zelda anime or something Zelda. Like, I feel like video game movies could work, but for some reason, every time one comes out, it's really bad. And this Tomb Raider movie is probably the best one that I have seen, I think. I'm pretty sure it's the best video game movie I've ever seen, but that isn't saying much, like at all. Like, this is a slight step in the right direction for video game movies, I'd say. A lot of people thought Angry Birds was the first good video game movie, and I thought that movie was awful, so I'd say this is probably the closest we've gotten so far to having a competent video game movie. This is a competent, fine movie. It is okay, and it's a lot better than I thought it would be. This movie, definitely compared to other video game movies, is very competent. The thing that really carries this movie is Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft. She is actually really good in this movie. She really sold the role as Lara Croft. I haven't played any of the games. I don't know anything about Lara Croft. I haven't even seen all of the original movies. I've seen a lot of parts of them, but I haven't seen all of them. So I know nothing about Tomb Raider. And I think that's probably a good thing, because I'm not going in with a set bias already of what I want to see, and then I'm gonna get pissed off because it's not what I want to see. But as far as I know, Alicia Vikander sold the role as Lara Croft. She really did well in this movie. She's very self-reliant and tough because had to take care of herself when her father went away. She's basically been alone her entire life, kind of like Rey from Force Awakens. So she's incredibly self-reliant and she knows what she's doing. So one of the best parts about this movie I found was that this movie is basically an origin story for Lara Croft. So while she's on this adventure, she's doing her first adventure ever. So when she's fighting a person, like, you can see that she reacts to things. Like, I just shot a guy. I just choked this guy out. I just did all these crazy things. You can tell she's doing all this stuff for the first time, even though she's very self-reliant, if that makes sense. This is definitely an origin story for Lara Croft. She's not already perfect at everything. She doesn't really know what she's doing, and as far as the performance goes, she really sold that in this movie, and you could see the innocence and naiveness that this character has. There's some legitimately good action scenes in this movie. There's this one bike chase that I liked quite a bit. There's this one scene where she has to, like, sneak through this camp that I thought was very cool for the most part. There's one part part where she's chasing after these thieves that stole her bag, and that was really good. That's probably my favorite action scene in the movie. I thought that was very well done. The action was surprisingly actually good in this movie. I thought every action scene in this movie was going to be a choppy mess, but it wasn't. It was actually competently done in certain scenes. But that's pretty much where my pros end. The rest of this movie is kind of just mediocre. It's kind of just forgettable, disposable fluff. There's not really many things about this movie that you're going to remember at all. Like, I saw this movie and I kind of forgot about it shortly after I saw it, so I had to start like writing down notes really quickly before I forgot. And it's just a really forgettable, disposable movie. If you're doing a chore in your living room or something, if you're trying to like fold laundry or write something on your computer, if you're trying to do some sort of work in your living room, you can leave this movie on and kind of half pay attention to it. That's what this movie's good for, you know? It's good for a movie that you can just leave on in the background and you can half pay attention to it. Because it's one of those movies. It's just a disposable, fine movie with nothing memorable about it at all. But it could be, I guess, mildly entertaining if you want to pop it in someday, I guess. What I feared in the trailers is that this movie would take itself way too seriously. And yeah, there's parts where this movie takes itself way too seriously. Most of the movie takes itself way too seriously. It thinks it's like this really serious epic where everything is serious and serious. And it's like, this movie I felt like should have been more like Indiana Jones, because it's the source material is over the top and crazy, and they should have embraced that like Indiana Jones does. Because Indiana Jones is some of the best action movies ever made, right? But they're not super realistic. They were able to push the boundaries in a lot of scenes, and there was a lot of really good humor. Like, this movie should have had a lot more humor. It should have had a lot more lightheartedness. It takes itself really seriously. It reminded me of Man of Steel, where the source material is so cheesy, but they're like, we gotta make Superman this super serious, sad character who had like a rough past, and he's like Jesus, basically. We gotta have a bunch of Jesus symbolism. We gotta make this a super serious movie, a realistic movie about what would happen if an alien like this came to real life. And it's like, your source material is a guy with a cape that can fly around and shoot lasers out of his eyes. It's a cheesy source material. You gotta have some lightheartedness in a movie called Man of Steel, and I feel like Tomb Raider is not exempt from this. It should be the same way for Tomb Raider. My favorite scenes in this movie involved Nick Frost. He was in the trailers. He's a very funny actor who I love a lot in movies like Hot Fuzz, and he was really enjoyable to watch in this movie, but he only has 2 scenes. He's barely in the movie. I feel like if they had a character like him, if he maybe went on the adventure with Lara Croft, it would have been better, because you need a character to be funny in a movie like this. It needs to be more lighthearted. Also, the villain character I saw potential in, but instead he was just kind of like forgettable and his motivation was all over the place. I had no idea what he was trying to do in the whole movie. What was his If someone can tell me what his motivation is, be sure to comment it, because I felt like it was very unclear. He's trying to like go into this thing to release this evil curse on the world. It's like, why would you want to do that? Are you just a power-hungry bad guy who wants to curse the world for some reason? Just hates everything? That's really boring. I felt like his character was very forgettable, and the guy who plays him was really forgettable too. It was just another forgettable, bland villain that wanted to bring a curse on the world for some reason. Like, why does he want to do this? Like, we knew nothing about him. He was just a dude. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of over-the-top scenes, which can be fine if it's a movie that understands that it's over-the-top. But I feel like in this movie, they just had over-the-top scenes and they didn't realize how ridiculous they were. Like, there's a part where she's hitting a bunch of trees and falling from the air, and she would be dead, but instead she struggles a little bit, she gets back up, and then she starts fighting again. That wouldn't have happened in real life. There's so many moments like that where you feel like she would have been dead or she would have broken a bunch of bones, but instead she's just like getting back up and she's fine afterwards. There's a lot of moments where the characters just kind of like, they should be shooting at something, but they don't shoot. They're just kind of like staring at the sky and like, you have a chance to shoot this person right in front of you that you want dead so bad, but you're just sitting there monologuing or not doing anything. There's a lot of moments like that in this movie where the characters should be shooting right at their enemy right in front of them, but they're not doing it. It reminded me of Jurassic World, you know? Because that's one of the movies that I've seen that the most in. Like, there's so many moments where they could be shooting the dinosaurs, but they don't do it. They're just sitting there. There's also a scene with a ladder that didn't make much sense, where Lara Croft, like, puts herself in harm's way when she could have easily avoided doing that, but instead she does this dumb thing that was just like, what are you doing? And that dumb decision was part of an entire sequence. It was an integral decision that she made and it was like, it kind of ruined that sequence, because it's like, if you hadn't made that dumb choice, you wouldn't be in this predicament, Lara Croft. The visuals mostly don't look very good either. There's a lot of really bad green screen and really bad visuals. Like, there's a scene that could have been cool with a plane and a waterfall, but instead it was just like, it took you out of the movie because the visuals were so bad. Like, there's so many scenes in this movie where the visuals are just inexcusable. I feel like this is gonna be another movie like Kong Skull Island, where people just go, oh, it's a fun movie, so it's passable and I like it, and you can't say it's bad or you're dumb. You need to just turn your brain off and have fun. You realize when you say that, studios are listening, and they're just gonna make more movies that are like Jurassic World, or a dumb movie where you just turn off your brain. They're just gonna keep making more movies that don't challenge you, or do anything different, or don't do anything creative. They'll just be the same over-the-top, goofy movies. And we'll never get an action movie like Mad Max Fury Road, where they like really revolutionized everything and did things that were different. We're never gonna get something like that if we keep telling studios that we just need the same over-the-top, goofy, fun movies. And there's also a whole character that I felt like had really good chemistry with Lara Croft, and he was an integral character for a while, and then they just forget about him. I think his character was called Lu Ren. His character was just completely forgotten about. Like, they had good chemistry with Lara Croft, and he was on the adventure, he was like her sidekick, and then they just push him to the side, and it was like, why would you do that? He was an interesting character that had good chemistry with the lead. Why would you push him to the side like that? And there's also a really terrible jump scare in this movie that was really bad. It's a small moment, but I hated it so much. I hated it. I really hated it. Something happened on screen, and it wouldn't have made a noise in real life. It wouldn't have made any sound, but instead they feel like they need to have this huge loud noise just to jump scare everybody. It's like, stop! So guys, Tomb Raider is just an okay, mediocre movie. Like, this movie isn't good. It's just an okay thing that was put out for some reason. I think this is a slight step in the right direction for video game movies, but it's still very mediocre and it needs a lot of work. If you want to make a really great video game movie, you need to work harder than this, and you need to have better writers, better directors, better visuals, a better budget. I'm gonna give Tomb Raider a C+. It's not a bad movie, it's competent, there's good things about it, but still, it's just mediocre because of all the problems that hold it back so much. Alright guys, if you like this video, be sure to like it, be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.